Next up on stage is going to be Brian Halen, VP Marketing Effectiveness at Nielsen, and Justine Landschultz, Senior Strategist, Digital Social Editorial at Chobani. Please welcome on stage. That's for you. Thank you, guys.
Some green is fine.
Cool. Good morning, everyone. I'm Justine Landschultz. I'm here with Chobani. I lead our digital strategy team.
And I think we have on the next slide, actually. We might as well put our pictures back there while we're doing this. And Brian Hyland, so I work in the marketing effectiveness group at Nielsen, focusing mostly on attribution for CPG clients.
So to give you a little bit of background, I wanted to tell you a little bit about where Chobani has been over the past year and a half. So a year and a half ago, we brought on a new media agency. We built an in-house creative agency. We were building a ton of marketing campaigns to launch in 2018. And the company had really big goals. Chobani is 10 years young, and we're always trying to innovate not only within the category, but also within the industry as a whole. And it turns out one of the challenges that we had was evolving our marketing strategy to meet the changing digital landscape. The biggest challenge was that we were selling a lot of yogurt, not online. And so we had to find a solution and a strategy to meet that changing landscape. And that's where we started to look at multi-touch attribution as a solution. So as we looked back at where we were, we needed to take a hard look at what does our data look like? How did we measure it? And what type of research did we do to help inform our strategy? But as we took a look back, it was really murky. Our data was sitting within walled gardens. We had really minimal transparency with our partners. And we hadn't done a good job keeping it all in one place and measuring it consistently. So we had a lot of different methodologies flying around out there with a lot of different vendors. It was really hard for us to say, hey, this tactic worked really well, or we changed our strategy with this tactic last year and we saw improvement. Additionally, we were doing a ton of research that was really time-consuming. It had a low impact and a high cost, and it was a year later that we were receiving all of the data and information and insights, and so we couldn't really use it to help inform our future strategy. So we knew what we needed was a better solution. And this is where our partnership with Nielsen comes into play. We knew that we needed better ownership. We needed long-term ownership of our data and our equity. We were making big investments into the market. And we wanted to make sure that those investments had a long-term place in our company. Additionally, we needed to move with speed. So Chobani is a really nimble organization. We're small. We're moving fast every day. We're a small team. And so we needed a solution that would be able to deliver not once a year, not twice a year, but maybe every 6 weeks or every month. Additionally, we needed consistency. This was a really big one for us. It's really hard to build a really good strategy when you can't look back at consistent information. So we needed a partner that was going to give us 1 or 2 metrics that we could measure all of our tactics or efforts by. Second to last, we needed transparency. This was a really big one for us because transparency to Chobani was a two-way street. We have lots of different partners, and they're amazing partners. And the best way for us to leverage those partnerships is to share information and to share complete information. So we needed a partner that would help us build a multi-touch attribution model where our data wasn't getting lost along the way. And then finally, we needed a solution that enabled us to be agile. We needed to be able to make fine-tuned optimizations to meet the purchase frequency cycle of our customers.
Yeah, so that's where we really wanted to come in and help out Chobani. And so it was really about finding the perfect marriage of the right data, the right technology, and the right analytics to build a closed-loop system to really give them power and ownership of these decisions that they wanted to make. So with their priorities in mind, the first thing we wanted to do was Oh, of course I have a build in here, it's not working. No. The first thing we wanted to do was equip them with a robust data set that they could use for refining audience and targeting, right? So leveraging, lifestyle data, behavioral data, as well as purchase-based data through our Nielsen Catalina assets to build refined audiences and develop strategies around those, as well as developing media strategies, so how they more effectively leverage digital as a platform to complement what they're doing in TV, and using both platforms more effectively. The second thing we wanted to do is once these audiences and this media is activated, it's out there in the world, monitoring it very closely to making sure that we're looking at what optimal frequency levels are, right? So taking into account response curves to see what's the optimal frequency at the tactic level, and then implementing frequency caps at the universal level so that we're eliminating waste, right? You're not delivering the same creative to one individual 15 times, monitoring that so you can invest those dollars to maximize reach potential. The next thing we wanted to do is we wanted to quantify these audiences, these tactics, by sales. So we implemented an MTA solution, so an attribution solution for Chobani, so that they could very quickly understand at a very granular level, what's driving their business from a sales perspective. So with those tools in place, Chobani could now monitor and optimize their media in flight based on volume, response, and ROI. And so the last piece of that is, again, leveraging those assets that they already had in place. So that annual research that they were doing to get that full breadth of the marketing, being able to kind of integrate and combine the data that we have on a monthly basis with that full breadth of the marketing investments that they were doing through a traditional marketing mix, right? So providing both the depth and the breadth in an integrated manner.
So there are three main buckets of learnings that we were able to glean. The first sits within the operational bucket. And this was the low-hanging fruit for us. It was the basics. But it was something that we weren't doing at the time. And so the two things that sit within this bucket are global frequency capping. Partnering with Nielsen with an MTA allowed us to see performance across all of our tactics and frequency across all of our tactics, or most of our tactics. And so implementing a global frequency cap was a really easy way to make sure our dollars were being spent more efficiently. The second big one for us was optimizing our spend towards our highest performing tactics or audience segments. This was really key because it allowed us to pick out what segments or channels or placements or creative were the highest value for Chobani. And we were able to maximize our dollar and our investment in market. The second bucket is within creative. And so this is really interesting because we're a super creative company. We're creative-led. And we were able to use the MTA to help extend and complement the narrative of TV. We were able to focus our messaging, which was a really big one. I think within the digital marketing landscape, there's a huge trend and push towards personalization. However, what we really found out is we don't need to be hyper-personalized. We can just be very focused. And so less really was more for us there. And lastly, we saw that aligning creative with the right audience segment was important. So we could develop slightly different creative iterations and make sure that we were delivering those to the right target. For example, perhaps we would deliver a stronger creative to a heavy yogurt buyer versus a totally new yogurt buyer. The last bucket was strategic. And so this was a really interesting and important bucket for us because we were evolving our marketing strategy to work much harder for us. And so the biggest thing here was transparency into our data. And this one was really key because it allowed us to not only see what was happening in real time in flight, but we were also able to own that data and own that long-term equity and maximize our long-term investments. Secondly, we had greater segmentation flexibility. So it's very interesting because we had traditionally done big segmentation studies and practices, and we said, hey, if we're in an environment that's super flexible and very nimble and moving very fast, do we need to play by the rules of a traditional segmentation? No, because we can optimize our media spend towards the highest performing segments. We can implement new segments. We can pull old segments back. And so we were able to make decisions on the fly that helped maximize our investment. Second to last was a continuous feedback loop. So a challenge that we had 2 years ago was that we weren't able to see the full picture. And so we were losing some of those really key insights and learning. And we weren't able to build those insights and learnings into our future strategy. Installing the MTA allowed us to see exactly what was happening in real time, and we could make adjustments to our strategy on the fly, or we can build those insights into our long-term strategy. Lastly, we were able to implement clear and measurable success metrics. So for us, this was being really focused on 1 or 2 key things that really moved our business. And so what we knew was, hey, in the media world, there's lots of different optimization levers. And for Chobani, it was really hard to say, let's optimize towards a cost per click because that's going to drive more sales for us in store. In fact, that was a really challenging thing to do. So as we found an MTA solution and brought it in, we were able to say, hey, let's actually optimize towards effectiveness because that's going to drive more volume for us at the end of the day. So overall, where do we want to go as we move forward here? I think as we look to the future, we want greater transparency overall. We know that the industry isn't perfect, that there's lots of data sitting out there that's still walled off. But we want to see that change. We want to start to push our partners to give us more visibility into where our dollars are going and what's happening with those dollars. So we really need quick and reliable insights into 100% of our investments. That's the goal. Additionally, we want visible, profitable returns on our investments. So it's really hard to say, hey, that activity didn't deliver an ROI of greater than $1, but we should still do it because it's goodwill, or we did it last year. But the numbers don't lie. And so we really need to push towards showing our partners, our internal partners, our external partners, that those ROIs need to be positive and that we need to push the business forward. Lastly, we want to be able to empower ourselves with the right data to make the right choices. And this means, hey, that if we have the right data sets, we have control, we have transparency, and we have all of the information to build a sound and successful strategy going forward. So with that, thank you so much. I think we're ahead of time, so we saved you guys a few minutes.
Catching up a little bit. Yeah.